Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. We are only hours away from when polling opens tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Saturday the 19th of November. The 14-day campaigning period for GE15 will come to an end 11:59 p.m. tonight. And after that, any activity that can be construed as appealing for votes will not be allowed. This time around, GE15, more Malaysians will be able to vote compared to any other previous general election, thanks to the lowering of the voting age and automatic voter registration. The question is, will they come out to vote tomorrow? Thomas Fann is the chairperson of Bersih. He joins us now. Thomas, the discussion about voter turnout has almost always focused on, which political side will benefit or who will be disadvantaged if the turnout is low. But if we were to look at it from the perspective of a democracy, why is it important that there is high voter turnout?
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, I think the very word democracy tells us that, it's only meaningful if there is meaningful mass participation by the people, because democracy is about the people electing their representative and electing the government that will rule over them for 5 years. But if the people are not interested in participating, then I think it just render democracy a little bit meaningless. Nonetheless, whether high voter turnout or low voter turnout, legitimate government will be elected, but it will be a government that would not have a strong mandate from the people, and the government would know it itself. Let me give you a very extreme example. Let's say a voter turnout of 50%. We almost were there with the Johor election at just under 55%. But let's say this election, the voter turnout was 50%. And because of the multi-cornered fight, the winning coalition garnered 40% of the popular vote. Now, 40% in a 50% voter turnout would mean 20%. Only 20% of the eligible voters supporting this new government. Now, a government like that would not have a strong sense of support from the rakyat because it knows that 80% do not support it. So what would happen is that this government will then rely on populist policies and would not dare to do structural changes or reforms that is needed for the country. And this will hurt our country in the long run. So a high voter turnout, I think, is important. Whoever gets elected will know that the majority of Malaysians has spoken.
Okay, I take your point. I mean, that there have been instances where we see a weak government is not a brave government. And I saw this quote that said, bad governments are elected by good people who don't vote. So, really the idea is to get as many people to turn out to vote tomorrow as possible.
Absolutely.
I know Bersih is looking to make sure that we achieve a voter turnout of more than 70% for GE15. I'm just wondering, would 70% be considered easily achievable? Because if you look at GE14, our voter turnout was 82%, then GE13 82%, then GE14, GE13 84%. I mean, that's quite high. Do you expect it to be high again this year?
I don't expect it to be higher simply because Undi 18 and automatic voter registration has increased the electoral roll by 42% compared to GE14. So we have now a whopping about 6.2 million additional voter into our electoral roll. So to try to emulate the GE13 or 14 of over 80% would mean a massive number of new people coming out to vote. And that will be quite challenging because don't forget that a lot of these people, the bulk of it, in fact, are automatically registered. People who didn't register because they were not interested or otherwise, but now registered. So just to give you a context, if everyone who turned out and voted in GE14 were to come out and vote in this election, the voter turnout for this election will be 58%. Only 58%. So which means that to hit 70%, you need about 2.5 million new voters coming out to vote. And given the situation of politics and also undi banjir, a few weeks ago, I said that was challenging, but I would like to publicly say that I'm revising my estimate right now. I think that hitting 75% or even above is doable, is definitely doable. There's a palpable excitement on the ground, you know, as we approach polling day tomorrow. So I think that getting 75%, 3.5 million out of the 6.2 million new voters to come out and vote is certainly achievable. And I'm quite excited with that.
Well, that's very heartening to hear. Let's keep that excitement going. Make sure that it goes all the way through to 6 p.m. tomorrow. Can I ask you very quickly, Thomas, what have been the observations, the experience of Malaysian voters overseas? I know they are so keen to cast their ballot, but they've been facing some challenges getting their ballots home. Can you share with us how Bersih, what the observations have been for Bersih?
You know, we are not directly involved in the postal voting process. For that, we handed it over to our partner, Global Bersih, to handle. But nonetheless, we have been getting a lot of feedbacks and information. I mean, the whole process of issuing postal ballot that EC has been using is so manual. It relies on human. And, you know, human errors abound. We have people who receive their ballots and they open up the DHL package and it was totally empty. We have people who receive other people's ballot in their DHL package. We have people whose Boran 2 serial number and the ballot doesn't match. And we have people who don't have returning officer address, all kind of problem due to human error. But nonetheless, we have almost 50,000 overseas Malaysians who applied successfully and they will issue ballots. But we also getting reports, a lot of them up to now still have not received their ballot. But the good news is at least about 30,000 over are on the way back, or already back and been delivered to the returning officers. So this is a huge increase compared to the last GE, which was just under 8,000 in total. But this time we are hitting 30,000, maybe even 40,000 ballots returning. And in some constituency where there's a close fight, this could make a difference.
I'm so excited to hear that. Clearly, there is a palpable, energy over GE15. Thomas, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. Appreciate your time. Thomas Fann from Bersih there. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned.
Dengan kebaikan ho-ho-ho. Bawah lengan lebih segar dan cerah dengan Rexona Baharu dengan vitamin E Revive Booster dan Sakura Jepun. 3 kali mengurangkan kesan gelap. Bila keraguan melanda, terus mara kerana setiap pergerakan adalah langkah yang cerah. Rexona, move right now. Oops.
Masanya telah tiba untuk kita memilih siapa wakil yang membawa mandat kita, mandat rakyat. Marilah kita mengundi.
Bagi saya, harga rumah sekarang memang sangat mahal lah. Kadang-kadang kami sebagai kaki tangan kerajaan pun masih belum mampu lagi untuk beli rumah. Sampai sekarang pun rumah tak terbina lagi atas tanah tersebut. Disebabkan kos untuk membina rumah itu pun sangat mahal.
Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. The 14-day campaigning period will end for GE15 tonight, 11:59 p.m., Friday, the 18th of November. But the question is, has the period been marred by hate speech and toxic rhetoric? Joining me now is Wathshlah Naidu. She's the Executive Director for the Centre for Independent Journalism. Wathshlah, thank you for being on the show tonight. I know the Centre for Independent Journalism has conducted a hate speech monitoring project for GE15. You launched the Say No to Hate Speech portal to keep track of all the hate-based narratives. Can you tell us a little bit more about this social media monitoring initiative, and what were some of the key points that you found during the period?
Yeah, thank you very much, Melissa. Really happy to be here today. The social media monitoring initiated by CIJ in partnership with the University of Nottingham, Malaysia, University Science Malaysia, and University Malaysia Sabah, it's kind of like one of the first social media monitoring that we are doing, we've done actually. And we are looking at the severity of hate speech during the election period. And most of the hate speech that we've seen, of course, it happens in physical events, but it get amplified and viralized through social media. And we've seen these patterns, in the last few state elections, and we wanted to monitor that to see the extent of which this proliferates amongst the different political actors. Hence the reason we're actually monitoring about 90 odd political actors across 4 platforms: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, as well as YouTube. And we've been doing 2 phases of monitoring. The initial pilot was from 15th of August to the 30th of September. And the second phase started right smack in the midst of the election on the 20th of October. And the trends are quite alarming, but not surprising, because, our hypothesis has somewhat been proven, unfortunately, that it is indeed focused on race and religion. They have dominated the political rhetoric, on social media. We've seen key actors who are the main amplifiers, in terms of very divisive, racist, intolerant, and hate-based narrative. And what is really worrying is that, it is very, very focused on the concept of Malay supremacy, of Ketuanan Melayu, and this goes hand in hand with anti-Chinese rhetoric, anti-non-Muslim rhetoric. And these race and religious hate narratives have actually been weaponized to create fear and fear mainly against the Chinese, but also attempting to influence the Malay Muslim voters against voting, Pakatan Harapan, for example, if they want the Malay and religious rights not to be eroded or influenced by non-Muslim. So this, in itself is creating, challenges, because we are polarizing the society, and we are using this over and over again. I mean, it's not something new. We've been using it for decades, but it's really being amplified over social media now. We are also...
may I very quickly interrupt you and ask you, so you said it's being amplified over social media. Has the news media been complicit in amplifying? Because often news media take stories or issues that are trending on social media and report that. By reporting the racial and religious rhetoric, does that, sensationalize intentionally or inadvertently amplify the hate-based narrative?
Yeah, Melissa, there are 2 sides to this, actually. There have been instances where we've documented, and in fact, we've also responded to it, where media and certain media have, in fact, actively been propagating racist narratives, right? Hate narratives, encouraging very, very divisive, polarizing language. So that is one concern. The other thing is, of course, as you said, the way it's being reported. So there are, of course, progressive media who have been attempting to provide counter positions by interviewing or quoting other experts, including civil society organizations. But there have been certain media that we've also monitored that seem to have only one position, right? They are either quoting the very right-wing hate narrative that's already been propagating, and that's just one position. So we see the role of media here have been quite diverse. One in itself is very supportive of the particular race narrative. The other one's trying to balance it. But the interesting thing to this is that media has also gone on social media. So the monitoring that we've done is also on media who report or at least have their articles on social media. And that gains a different level of traction, because you see some of the reports that then encourages certain kind of responses from the netizens, then it itself then becomes viral. So the role of media is critical, not just in the way they report, within the traditional or legacy media, print, broadcast, and so on, but it changes in terms of the scope of its audience when it's on social media in itself too. So They do have a role to play. They have been playing a critical role, but at the same time, I think there could be more that the media could do in terms of making sure that the counter or alternative positions are being put forward more actively.
Did CIJ monitor any gender-based hate narratives during this period? Was there misogynistic? Is there a misogynistic element to some of the narratives that were put out?
Oh, definitely. There were two elements to this. One, the very entrenched patriarchal position in terms of very negative stereotypes of women candidates, right? And this is not surprising. We saw so many sexist remarks about women candidates. And, there were sexualization of some of the candidates in terms of, there was in fact, and it's in fact a media that picked it up, a photo of the candidates and talking about, brains and beauty. So it takes away
brains. I saw that.
Brains, yeah. So there is that level of sexualization, objectification of women that that's happening. But then we also have had some political candidates, in some of their very, in their charamas, in their TikTok videos, belittling and undermining women candidates by saying that they are not competent, they are not able to lead. So this in itself creates, this distrust that women candidates are capable and equipped for public life. The other thing we've seen in terms of the misogynistic opinions and arguments of how some of the politicians have used public morality and Islamic values and weaponized that to incite hate against individuals or communities on the basis of their sexual orientation and gender identity. And these attacks are not just against the LGBTIQ community, but it's also been used against some of the politicians. Pakatan Harapan has been branded as liberal and promoting LGBTIQ agenda. And we've always seen the narrative, the attacks against Anwar Ibrahim on the basis of misogynistic and public morality arguments too.
All right. Wathshlah, thank you for joining me on the show tonight. I appreciate your time. Wathshlah Naidu from the Center for Independent Journalism. Another very quick break here and consider this. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more.
Memperkenalkan U Postpaid baharu. Nikmati data pantas sedia 5G, perantauan global percuma, peranti 5G dan dapatkan talian keluarga. Naik taraf ke U Postpaid baharu dari RM38 sebulan hanya dengan U Mobile.
Bag of pasta abilities, perfect for families. Quality ingredients, oh so tasty.
As easy as 1, 2, 3. Always good, anytime.
Stadium kencang di setiap pelosok rumah anda. Pelanggan Pack Sports boleh menikmati 30% diskaun dan 100 Mbps dengan tawaran Astro Fiber. Switch sekarang.
Tak lama lagi, kita pergi mengundi. Adakah anda sudah fikir, pertimbang sebelum memilih?
Do we know what we as Malaysians want?
Di Astro AWANI, kami bawakan perbincangan yang konstruktif.
Ada banyak maklumat dan data yang perlu kita fahami. Tak susah.
Untuk kita semua, untuk Malaysia.
Masa depan di jari anda. Suara rakyat jadi penentu.
Semuanya di Astro AWANI, saluran pilihan raya anda.
Hello, I'm Melissa Idris. Thank you so much for staying with me on Consider This. Now, over 21 million voters will be eligible to vote in GE15. They're going to be casting their ballots tomorrow, starting from 8 a.m. This is more than ever before. It's the highest number of eligible voters that we've ever had, thanks to the lowering of the voting age and automatic voter registration. The question is, have the number of polling and counting agents, or pachas, increased in tandem with the increase in the electoral roll? Let's ask Danesh Prakash Chacko. He's the director of the Electoral Reform Group, Tindak Malaysia. Danesh, thank you for joining me on the show tonight. Can we begin very quickly with helping us understand the role of a pacha, how it's different from an election observer, and what they will be doing tomorrow?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I just would like to get straight to the point. A polling agent, counting agent is an election monitor. So that's how it's different to an election observer. He or she serves the eyes and the ears of the candidate during the polling process and the counting process. So he or she is to observe the whole process, ensure that it goes according to the law. And if it doesn't go according to the law, he or she has the right to object on the spot so that the rectification can be done. So this is what differs an election monitor, that's pacha, the election observer.
Okay, all right, and all of that is going to mean that they will be on duty all day tomorrow, 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Have the number of pachas increased in tandem with the fact that we're expecting a lot more people to be eligible to vote, and hoping a lot more people will be voting tomorrow? Have the number of pachas increased in tandem?
The demand has went up. Where's the supply? Severe shortfall, because I can tell you, even few days before the polling day tomorrow, we can still have some political parties who really needs hundreds of people, but they have not mobilized this. If you ask me, Tindak Malaysia have done a webinar about counting how many pachas you would need to do back in March, right? Hardly anyone would turn up for that webinar because everyone thinks election is so far away. So when the election was announced, suddenly you start realizing political parties need hundreds. In some constituencies like Bangi, you probably need 1,000. Damansara maybe 800. Right? This is definitely a high counter number, right? And then also because pachas are the eyes and the ears of the candidate. So sometimes the pachas are organized by the previous candidate, but because the previous candidate got dropped off, suddenly there's a disruption of the supply. So the demand is very high, but the supply cannot meet because quite a number of political parties have failed to mobilize on time.
Right. How many pachas do you need, ideally, for each polling station, Danesh? How many pachas would be ideal?
Because a polling station has multiple polling streams, that is saluran. So let's take one very simple example. If there is one polling station that has 4 saluran, which is definitely not an urban area, that's for sure, you do need one we call the Ketua Pachaba. That means the chief pacha who coordinates any and rectifies any issues. He or she can double up as the barung agent, the booth observer. Then for the polling streams, the salurans, you can have 3 saluran where there is 2 polling agents, and later the evening 1 counting agent, and then the other 1 or 2 remaining salurans, you can have 1 polling agent who also doubles up as counting agent. If you ask me, this is like really bare minimum, because on paper, a polling agent should serve no less than 2 hours. He or she has a right to continue serving the whole day. But let's be very real, it is very tiring. So that is why you need hundreds of pachas for election.
Danesh, are you expecting there to be any implications from this, high demand of pachas yet a shortage of pachas?
If you ask me, because after GE15, we have a partially reformed election commission who has responded to all the various NGO needs, like Bersih, Engage, Tindak, and all the other NGOs. The situation has improved. Okay, there is much room for improvement, but I can tell you the implication of shortfall for pacha at this time for me is not that too concerning for me, because right now the election process is far better than what it used to be.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I appreciate your time joining us. But that, unfortunately, wraps up this episode. That was my conversation with Danesh Prakash Chacko from Tindak Malaysia. That's all we have for you in this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.